folks, Big Sam here, BigSamsFStops, and thank you very much for being with me once again today. Today I want to talk about lenses. You know, those round things that you attach to your camera and then you take pictures. A friend of mine, Mr. T. Taiwo, is an awesome guy. He's a well-known photographer, professional photographer here in Abuja. A while back asked me, Sam, how come you have so many lenses? And actually I don't know. And I've gotten questions from young photographers that I meet who ask me, what lens should I buy? This is probably the most frequently asked question in photography. What lens should I buy? What camera should I buy? What gear should I buy? The reason why that question becomes more relevant is the fact that there is just so much to choose from. All kinds of lenses from all the different lens manufacturers. Tons of lens manufacturers, and each one has an iteration in its own catalog. So it's a legitimate question, but it's also very difficult to answer. First of all, let me do the first disclaimer. When I'm talking about lenses, I'm talking about interchangeable lenses for DSLR cameras and of course mirrorless cameras. So when I say I don't own a mirrorless camera yet, and I don't have mirrorless lenses, but it's the same principle. So the answer to the question of what lens should I buy is like asking somebody, what should I eat at a buffet? You can pretty much eat anything, you can eat everything, or you can just focus on what you like. If you're a vegetarian, then go to the salad bar. If you're a meat lover, go to the meat section. If you're a seafood lover, go to the seafood section. So I guess in answering that question, therefore, the first answer that comes to mind is buy a lens that is most suitable for the kind of photography you want to do. Now, even defining the different kinds of photographies that there are and putting them in their concrete space is a very difficult thing to do. For instance, I say humorously sometimes that urban photography, or what you call street photography or city photography, for me is just landscape photography and wildlife photography combined together in the city. The wildlife this time around are human beings, and then of course the landscape that you're shooting is the cityscape, the streets, the buildings, the people doing their stuff on the street. So any attempt to try to concretize lenses in any particular cocoon I think is almost impossible. But generally speaking, there are certain lenses that lend themselves more to certain kinds of photography than others. In other words, certain lenses are more suitable for some kinds of photography than others. Again, this is not perfect, and as I go along, I would be explaining these differences one by one. Take, for example, landscape photography. From the very concept of landscape, you want to capture as much of what you are seeing as possible. So generally speaking, wide angle lenses. Take for instance this, I think this is the 50 millimeter. It was 35 millimeter, 24 millimeter, 12 millimeter by the way, 10 millimeter by the way, are suitable to capture wide vistas. You want as much of your foreground and background in focus as possible, and you want to capture a very wide area. So generally speaking, wide angle lenses are very suitable for landscape photography. But let me say, okay, before we even go there, so for primes, you're looking at either your 12 millimeter primes, your 24 millimeter prime through 35, 50. There are some 65s out there. There is the 85 millimeter prime, 105s, and then all the way up to 200. For your zooms, 15 to 30, I think that's from Tamron. 16 to 35, very popular lens from Canon. Sigma has a 16 to 35 also, I think, and you know, your 24 to 70s, your 24 to 105s, your 70 to 200s. I wouldn't go beyond 200 for landscape photography. Now comes the caveat. I have seen amazing, spectacular landscape photographs taken with the 800mm primes from Canon, and I think Zeiss has one, and so on and so forth. I've seen spectacular landscape pictures taken with 600mm, taken at 400mm, and so on and so forth. So there's really no way to cocoon any kind of lens for any particular kind of photography. But generally speaking, you will find more wide angle lenses in the kit of a landscape photographer. If you come to portraiture, either in studio portraiture or outdoor portraiture, you're looking at from your mid levels to again high, from as low as 35mm all the way to 200. Again, I have seen excellent portraits taken with at 600mm, 500mm, 800mm. But if you're a studio portrait photographer, except your studio is as big as a warehouse, you wouldn't use a long lens. You would use a reasonably shorter lens. And then you go to sports photography and wildlife photography. Those ones definitely benefit from long lenses. Your 60 to 600s, your 150 to 600s, your from Canon, for instance, you have the 100 to 400. Nikon has a 200 to 600, and so on and so forth. But generally, you benefit from long lenses. Now, would you show up at an African safari, wildlife safari, for instance, with a nifty 50? Well, possibly, yeah. If your intention is to take very wide angle shots of the open savannas and the open, you know, wilderness and so on and so forth. There's nothing that says that if you and I are on the same safari that you want to shoot wildlife. My interest may be wildlife. Your interest is, you know, landscape. So it means every lens is kind of in a way suitable for every kind of photography, really speaking. Everything boils down eventually to what your own creative vision is. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to create with your photography? What story do you want to tell with it? That is what should actually determine what lenses you buy or what lens you buy. Not really, one lens is good for landscape and another is good for portraiture. No. Every lens is good for everything, depending on what you want to capture and what story you want to tell. And this is what I would say to anybody out there who wants to buy a lens. Think about what you want to do with the lens. This is the first of our lens series. I'm going to be talking about which lens the factors that you want to consider in buying a lens when we're talking about either budgeting and whether you should buy kit lenses or buy, pro lenses. Which one should you choose? And then maybe we can see if we can narrow it down to maybe the first 3 lenses that you want to have that will generally cover all that you want to do. But in the meantime, that's where we're ending this conversation for today as far as lenses go. Thank you very much for being with me again. My name is Big Sam. This is BigSamsFStops, and I'll see you at the next video. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.